Now to the UK, where Rishi Sunak is set to become Britain's next prime minister. The Conservative Party chose Sunak as its leader on Monday, the third PM in under 2 months. He was the only candidate to be able to gather the 100 nominations needed to qualify for the race. Previously, the UK's finance minister under Boris Johnson, Sunak's resignation helped hasten Johnson's collapse. With Indian heritage and Hindu faith, the 42-year-old will be the first person of color to serve in the role and Britain's youngest prime minister since 1812. He takes over the top job from Liz Truss, who beat him in the last leadership race, but flamed out after just 45 days in office. After Tuesday meeting with the King to make it, that's King Charles, of course, to make it official, the new prime minister faces double-digit inflation, rising energy prices, and a party in chaos. For more, I am joined by Gillian Tett from the Financial Times. She's the editorial board chair and editor-at-large U.S. Gillian, thank you so much for being with us. Rishi Sunak is facing a range of dire economic challenges. What's at the top of his to-do list, or what should be at the top of his to-do list?
Well, John, I have to be honest and say the word dire sounds like a bit of masterful English understatement from you. It is absolutely terrifying. He has got an economy that's sliding into free fall. Inflation's going through the roof. The population are really angry. You've got an energy crisis. You've got the Ukraine war, of course. And on top of all that, you've got a bitterly divided Conservative Party who have just been through the most extraordinary bout of upheaval we've seen, I would say, ever. So the first thing he has to do is to try and stabilize the financial markets that have been indicating tremendous levels of panic. And that's been feeding through to people's mortgages in a very direct way. And the very fact that he is now essentially anointed has already stopped sterling from weakening and stopped the slide in the bond market as well. So that's the good news. The next problem, though, is he has to put together a budget. And Britain has a huge hole in its finances. And the question of how to plug that without making people even angrier is going to be very, very difficult.
Do we have a sense, Gillian, of what he's going to do? Or is that the wrong question to ask? Because as you've just pointed out, he doesn't have a whole lot of options.
Well, like many politicians, he's going to try and push all the really nasty pain off until after the next election, which is supposed to be in 2 years' time. So he's going to try and produce something that's convincing to the markets, that sounds good, but basically make sure the electorate remains quite protected. And if he can do that, it will be an extraordinary achievement. And it's something that matters not just for the UK, but globally, because really what's going on is that you've had a populist government, a populist political leader in the form of Boris Johnson and then Liz Truss, who've been leading the UK. And this is really the revenge of the technocrats, people who are not charismatic, but are competent, who can count, who sound convincing, who know what they're doing. If you like, it's return of the experts. And so if Sunak achieves his aim of unifying Britain, basically calming down the financial markets and delivering policies that look credible, he'll be sending a message that matters not just for the UK, but right across the Western world.
Well, you've set up one of the great sorting techniques for thinking about all of Europe. I think about when you were talking about the technocrats versus the populists, you think of Italy, which just went from technocrat to populist. So that brings me back to his party. How restive is the Conservative Party, and how much will they put up with the sort of return of the technocrats, given that the forces of populism are still roiling?
Well, the honest answer, we just don't know, because ever since Brexit happened, and Brexit was absolutely another form of of populist backlash against the experts. Ever since Brexit happened, we've been having this bitter civil war inside the Conservative Party about what exactly were they trying to achieve with Brexit. Were they trying to create a little England that harked back to the past with a paternalistic government that looked after people? Or did they want a much more radical free market vision of the sort that Liz Truss tried to implement? So the Conservative Party is still very split. The UK is very split about how it's going to actually create a future outside the European Union or not. But the question about populism versus technocrats, that is right across the Western world right now. And as you say, Italy in some ways has just gone back the other way, but there's going to be a lot more elections in Europe and, of course, in America, where this choice between competent experts or populists is going to keep coming up over and over again.
And finally, Gillian, although we could talk about this for hours, because as you say, the reverberations go outside the UK and through all of Europe. But he is, as someone of Indian origin, there is a large South Asian community in the UK. How significant is this moment in British history, and how do you think that will play out during his time as Prime Minister?
Well, thank you for mentioning it, John, because it is pretty remarkable. You've got one of the youngest prime ministers at the age of 42 that we've ever seen. And we got the first non-white prime minister that we've seen as well. And frankly, everyone should cheer that because there was ever a time that we need to actually stand up and recognize the need for tolerance, for globalization, for essentially embracing the best of a global world. It's now. And so if anyone can do that, it probably is Rishi Sunak. And boy, do we need this.
All right, Gillian Tett, also an expert on Russia and Ukraine, but we don't have time to ask you about those today, so we'll have to have you back. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.